Hello everyone and welcome to another video. My name is Will and in this video today I want to talk to you guys about the stock footage trends that I think are going to go really far in 2018 coming right up. Just before we begin guys, I want to say that all of the stuff that I'm about to go over here is just my speculation. Obviously no one's got a crystal ball that can predict the future, but I think having read a lot of information on their agencies and sort of taking a look at what's trending right now, these kind of subjects are going to be really valuable to shoot and will really go far for this year. But without further ado guys, let's get straight into it. So the first one that I want to sort of talk about here is future tech. So what do I really mean by that? Well, I think for starters, 360-degree footage could be a really good seller. It's definitely early days for people to be shooting that right now. But again, guys, it's always the early adopters who sort of, make the most money early on when it comes to adopting new formats. If you had picked up a super fast slow motion camera sort of 5 years ago when, the stock footage industry didn't really have a lot of slow motion content, you'd have gone and made a whole bunch of stuff with that and you'd have made quite a lot of money compared to if you'd just come in now. So by no means, I'm not saying go out and say invest a ton of money in some really expensive 360 gear, but it's certainly worth thinking about. If you can go and get, a moderately priced 360 camera, say, and you go off to location to shoot, there's nothing stopping you to go and do, there's nothing stopping you from doing that shoot with your regular camera. But also perhaps you could set up the 360 camera and actually get some extra content there as well. And just sort of while we're on that as well, people using VR equipment just in a standard way here, if we're talking about filming with a DSLR or production camera, people using virtual reality equipment is definitely going to be quite a hot one this year, both in an entertainment and educational sense and also sort of like in a workplace sense. I know the agencies are looking for things like medical 360 content, and there's also a lot of educational purposes there as well as things like tourism. It's also really cool if you've got like 360 content from Asia or perhaps a major American or European city. There's a lot of opportunities there. So, and just while we're on the subject of future tech as well, something else that I think is really going to go far this year in particular is going to be things to do with flight and space. So you see a lot of things in the news right now about drones, about SpaceX and space exploration as a whole, and I think that kind of content is going to go really far this year. The new horizon, if you like, space as a whole is going to go really really far. If anyone's got talent with visual effects, I think there's certainly going to be a lot of opportunities for you in this industry, both with doing things like with After Effects, for example, or Nuke, if anyone's familiar with that sort of 2D compositing kind of thing. That would be really good if you're shooting that kind of content. And also just things like, home delivery by drone, all of that kind of stuff. I know some of that stuff's already out there on the agencies, but I think this is really going to explode this year. And now just sort of coming on to number 2 as well here, guys, is basically global trade. I think is going to go really far this year. So what exactly am I talking about when it comes to that? Well, it's things like, the death of the high street. You see all of these other big chains and, small shops as well sort of closing down. And the rise of e-commerce this year is really big. We've already seen a big effect of it over the last couple of years, but things involving big e-commerce sort of retailers, people like Amazon, for example, all of that sort of shipping and sort of big e-commerce is really going to kick off this year. I think we're going to see a lot of demand tied up with that. And sort of like the automation of retail in that way is going to be a really big thing this year. And I know there's a lot of content already up there on the agencies to do with that kind of thing, but there's going to be a big demand, and I think there's certainly not enough content up there right now. So that kind of thing is going to go really far this year. I do really recommend shooting that kind of thing. Now coming on to number 3, guys, we've actually got a bit of a tricky one here, and that's politics, believe it or not. And when I say politics, I'm talking about things like politicians, new parties, and sort of, there's a lot of editorial content here as well when it comes to things like riots and protests, and politics as a whole has really come up in demand recently, both commercially, funnily enough, and editorially. Obviously with the editorial side, you've got a lot of news reporting and stuff going on right now. I'm not here to take sides or anything like that, but I have a very liberal friend who is actually making quite a lot of money from content that he has of Donald Trump. Basically, guys, politicians that are in the news right now, politicians that are having sort of like the spotlight shown on them for good or bad, do sell. And if you have the opportunity to sort of film those parties or people or protests that are evolving around that kind of content matter, then I do really recommend you go out and film it. There is a big demand there for stock footage right now. And I mean, we've also seen sort of a lot of commercial companies sort of come into this space recently. You've got things like the Pepsi advert that was done recently with sort of a lot of protesting and all that kind of thing going on. It didn't really go down very well, but there's a lot of demand for that kind of content still in this niche. The whole sort of rebel or that kind of content there where basically you've got a political message to convey through that meaning. There's definitely a lot of demand for that. You've also got things on this sphere like equal rights, for example, women in the workplace, equal pay, all of these kind of things right now, really hot topics, really high in demand, and not that much content out there being covered of those things. So if you do get the opportunity, regardless of whether you're on one political spectrum or the other, I just suggest that you put away your politics and actually go out and shoot whatever's available to you, because it will have a good chance of selling on the agencies. Obviously, that's up to you. There's also a whole sort of other thing here as well, where a couple of years ago, obviously with the Americans going into Afghanistan and all the rest of it, there was a lot of demand for military content of that nature. I'd say there's still a fair amount, but we're also seeing a lot of tension now, obviously, on the Korean Peninsula, and that kind of content could be really high in demand in the future for things like to do with the military in that area in Asia. Weaponry as a whole is obviously always a good one to film. I know people who are shooting stock footage who are also serving in the military, and they're actually doing really well with stock footage as a side income in addition to their actual military careers. And they always do well with that kind of thing throughout the years. They've been doing it for years and years now. But I think stuff sort of evolving around Asia, especially right now, could be quite high in demand this year. But at the end of the day, guys, it is up to you. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable going out in those situations or covering that, then that's fine. But if you do get the opportunity, I do suggest you do it. Now, coming in at number 4, guys, we've got a classic one here, and that is eco-friendliness. Recycling and renewable energy has always been quite high in demand, but right now there's a specific emphasis on plastic waste in the ocean. I'm seeing a lot of news reports and a lot of demand on the agencies as well for things like that. We've seen a lot of, you've probably seen news reports, etc., of dolphins or other marine wildlife that's sort of washed up on the shore, and their stomachs have been, filled with garbage, basically, that, it's basically caused them to die. And that sort of thing's being covered quite heavily right now, both in an editorial sense and commercial sense. A lot of companies out there right now want to sort of look green, so to speak. They want to be eco-friendly. They want to have that positive message behind their brand, because obviously that's going to push engagement with their services. So if you can get that kind of content, both commercially and editorially, whether it's people cleaning up the oceans, for example, if you live near a beach, this is a really good opportunity for you right now. To go and actually, shoot people picking up waste. You actually get to get a lot of really good content there that's probably going to be quite high in demand. And I would definitely recommend filming that if you get the chance. There's a good chance that you may have seen videos on Facebook or YouTube where people have been saving marine life, and that's definitely heated up the debate again around sort of like, eco-friendliness, global warming. You've obviously also got the classics like renewable energies and that. But there's definitely an emphasis on marine cleanups right now and the ocean as a whole, and I think that topic's going to be really strong this year. So if you do get the opportunity to get any of that stuff, thoroughly recommend it. So you've got things like marine conservation, eco-friendly, green corporations, all of those kind of things. Try to think of big sort of like buzzwords or key phrases that you can go out, you can conceptualize and actually shoot those for stock footage, and the chances are you're going to do really well with that content matter. Now, one thing that's really interesting as well with the last topic that I sort of want to talk about here, and it's not necessarily a subject as such because it can be applied to a lot of different things, but we've seen mass demand across all of the main agencies for what's called minimalist and candid content. So in an age where we have a huge amount of information at our fingertips, and you go on the internet now and there's so much that you can engage with both on social media and just on the web as a whole, people are starting to find that there's sort of an overwhelming amount of information available, and now buyers are actually starting to look for more content that's just sort of minimalist in nature. It's sort of like that age-old phrase, less is more. And people are now looking for sort of more simplistic content, not necessarily in the sort of stereotypical stock sense of a white background and just sort of really posed models that is very stocky. That's not really what they're looking for, but they're looking for more sort of clean cut. If you think about advertising and putting sort of copy text in the actual field, so you know, you might have some words here, for example, like a picture of the product or a message from your corporation, and just someone working at a desk in a very minimalist setting, that's going to go really well. And that's also like a really good keyword to target right now as well. That people doing minimalist things, minimalist lifestyles, etc. And this is something that's sort of expanding outside of stock footage as well. There are now YouTube channels out there that focus on minimalism and minimalistic lifestyles. And this is a thing that I think is going to be really sort of like the big buzz for this year. You know, last year it was sort of more a look at emojis and that kind of thing. But this year I think we're sort of going back to basics in terms of content. And the other thing that we're really sort of seeing there as well is candid content. So if you can get shots where it looks like the models that you're using or the environment that you're filming in is not really aware of the camera, then that can come across really, really nicely. So obviously if you're working with models and the models are smiling to camera, that's one thing. But if you can get them to do things in a really sort of genuine and organic way, then you could actually do candid content. And that's something that a lot of people are searching for right now. There's a big demand for that. Because I think the reason this is sort of coming about is primarily because brands as a whole are struggling to look authentic in how they come across to customers. There's a lot of big campaigns out there on the web, and a lot of people now are sort of stepping away from the corporate mass market appeal, and they're looking much more for candid sort of content and sort of, you know, more relatability to their audiences. So I do think if you can shoot that kind of thing, really, really good there. If you can go out and get that, companies can sort of get around that a little bit. So there's a big demand there, especially if you're targeting sort of a younger generation, to have sort of more candid, authentic content in your commercial. So if you can shoot that, highly recommend you do that. So at the end of the day, guys, those are my big sort of tips there. And the other thing that I was really sort of potentially focusing on as well right now is cryptocurrencies. I know that's sort of something that's sort of coming up in the background right now. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the main cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, perhaps, and Ripple, etc. That people actually using those in everyday situations, I think, is really going to be popular this year. We're definitely seeing a transformation of the monetary system in some way. Whether that's going to be a complete evolution or not, I don't know. But sort of content that evolves around that right now is going to be quite high in demand, I think, this year. You know, if you can get people purchasing goods with cryptocurrencies, trading cryptocurrencies in the real world, I know a lot of people are already having quite a bit of success with that kind of content, but I think there's going to be a big demand for more of that sort of content moving forward. So that just about wraps it up for this video, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I would take everything that I've said here with a pinch of salt. Obviously, no one can predict the future here. These are just sort of ideas and thoughts that I've put forward based on information that I've had from, you know, agencies, like I said at the beginning, and also just people that are actually purchasing content from the agencies, etc., and just sort of the clients that they're working with. There's definitely an undercurrent trend there. So I really hope you found this useful. Again, I wish you the best of luck with your stock footage shooting. I really appreciate the support that this channel is getting. Thank you very much to those of you who have subscribed to the channel. I've got more videos coming, and I really, I'm enjoying this process quite a lot, making these videos. I've got some links in the description below to a couple of resources, etc., if you guys want to connect with me. Thank you very much again for watching, and until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video.